Welcome back, guys. This week we're here with Dylan Kunz and Derrick Moore of the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, also known as SAIT. They're part of the School of Construction, and both Dylan and Derrick are the academic chairs for the pipe trades department. Is that correct? Yeah,
that is correct.
Pipe trades. What is all that? What does it encompass? What all falls into the pipe trades? Heading.
Well, I think the big leader is plumbing, right? That's what everyone sort of gravitates towards first. In Alberta, it comes part and parcel with a gas fitting ticket, right?
Yep.
Gas B endorsement, and then there's also steam fitting and pipe fitting.
Interesting. Yep. Within the School of Construction as a whole, how much kind of overlap, cross training is there between like the pipe trades, electricians, structural? What do you guys see as a cross training, cross exposure, overlap in terms of the general program in and of itself?
We fight in the parking lot, different buildings, everything.
Bike racks at 3:00.
Yeah.
Bring your buddies.
I feel like the plumbers usually win that one, or the gas fitters just show up with some Schedule 40 iron and then just win the fights. Yeah. So what do you guys? Is there any like kind of cross training at all?
Like within each trade, so now in plumbing, you've got a gas ticket and stuff. Sheet metal is, they've got a gas component to it now kind of thing. And more electrical now in plumbing than previously. So dabbling in it across the trades and stuff here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think worth mentioning that there's a common first year now for pipe trades. So if you finish out your plumbing, for example, I'm pretty sure you started as a third year steam fitter if you want.
Oh, so like
There's
there's
trade, so you get the first couple for
Oh, I
free.
thought you had to do the first 2 years on that in order to, and then it would, like if you wanted to get your ticket, like back when I went pipe fitter, gas fitter, and then went back and got my first 2 years kind of credited towards steam fitting.
Right.
Yeah.
So now we all learn the same thing in first year. So they put gas fitter, plumber, steam fitter, and sprinkler fitters coming in this year. So now, you're all credited for that. And then different trades, like Dylan was saying, they'll give you a little bit more credit or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. But you're not having to relearn that when you go back.
Yeah.
Get your other ticket kind of thing. It's like
safety, pressure's pressure, right?
Yeah.
So they pushed all the math down into the first year, almost all the math, right?
Yeah.
So you go through all that, and then you can almost kind of pick your path type of thing after you do the first year. So within the pipe trades, there's lots of cross training, but I think it's more of an individual sort of pursuit if you want to go from trade to trade. Like some people go from electrical and get into the mechanical trades and vice versa, right? Gas fitters tend to be pretty inclined electrically, it seems.
Yeah. Refrigeration as well and electrical kind of go hand in hand kind of thing. There's lots of
Controls, I guess. Yeah.
Exactly. They go hopscotch.
Now, something that we've kind of chatted about with a lot of the people that have been on Talking Apes is something that Jeff is pretty passionate about, which is continuing education credits. And we chatted about this just on the last show with somebody about...
I've been very excited to get you guys on.
Yeah,
just so
he's been drooling and waiting to like ask all these questions. Jeff, I'll let you kind of,
Yeah, so part of what we've been asking a lot of tradespeople, and then even for the last 4, 5, 6 years, I've been talking about it, working on the manufacturing side, about having our tradespeople, especially within Division 15, going in to maintain their ticket, is to actually implement a C, continuing education credits, just because of how much this trade especially has changed within Canada, especially, right? Like when I first got my ticket was when condensing boilers were just coming out intentionally. Like back then, if we saw condensing boilers, there was something wrong, right? Yeah. So now we get that, but our ticket is saying somebody like myself who was never trained on it. It was like all of a sudden, you've got the same certification as somebody 20 years older than you, right?
Yeah. Like I date myself, but I got my ticket in May of '94 kind of thing. And like same thing like you're saying, like somebody coming out now, they got way more technical training than I would have got back then, kind of thing. And then however my career went, sort of thing, kind of dictates what I learned on the job and stuff like that. Like I would value that, you know, everybody goes back and gets a little more training, refresher kind of thing. It only helps the industry and the people working on it. Like you walk up to some new boiler or something, just like, whoa, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and especially as we start talking about technology being at the forefront of what we're doing with our boilers, you know, having to set them up with multiple heating systems, right? If we're hooking it up to geo or if we're hooking it up to solar or anything like that, right? And then outside of just hydronics, maybe even looking at hydronics as a separate designation, like needing a hydronic certification in order to do some of these complex systems today. But then we also start talking about different piping, right? Now we're getting into a lot of fusion plastic and getting doing a CEC for that. And then the one thing that I've always thought we should get more involved in is operating a business or understanding the business side of the industry.
Oh yeah. It's like, in my experience, it's just kind of luck of the draw and where you're at, right place, right time kind of thing is, you know, and the individual, if they're, you know, passionate about starting their own business kind of thing. But a lot of the people that I've worked with over the years, a few of them have gone on, and you could tell kind of right away they had the right perseverance and stuff to go and get it started and that. Yeah. But no, I don't think too many of them had any like training in starting a business. It was just the drive that took them. And, yeah.
I mean, because a lot of guys are just like, you know, I got the skills, I got the tools, I'm going to start a business, right? And I feel like it's a trap that a lot of people fall into, and then they're either find themselves having to either floor the market on price, or they find that they're not getting projects, or they can't keep up with the administrative duties, the invoicing, the, you know, all the paperwork and et cetera, right? So, I mean, there's a significant amount of, I guess, experiential learning that you need to acquire working for and under either a mentor or something of that sort who understands that aspect. Whereas, you know, having that integrated into school. I mean, I'm not, you know, I didn't come through the trades. I came through like a business school, and honestly, it's like some of that stuff. Like it's a 4-year program. I feel you could do it in a year and a half. Right, like Cole's notes, basic things, skills that in like ways to read, you know, financial statements, ways to identify where you need to price your product, where, you know, how to cost your projects, all that, you know, general, not very, you know, intense project management stuff, more on the contracting side, but just general kind of being able to look at it from, you know, a bird's eye view and be able to make a decision or develop a path for yourself on, you know, from a business perspective as an entrepreneur. I think that's something that's really, you find a lot of people go into, get into I'm starting a one-man shop, and then it kind of falls flat somehow, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it comes down a lot to relationships as well, right? So
100%.
you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you can't do business with people, then you'll just be the smartest guy in the room because you're the only guy in the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about doing that? Like, because Division 15 is so diversified, is actually separating some things, you know, water filtration or purification, even, you know, hydronics, stuff like that. Do you think that's something that
The specialized one, like as a bigger institute kind of thing, we always have to look at, you know, space and availability and demand kind of thing too before, because it does take quite a bit to get a program kicked off and running and stuff. We have a couple right now, like a gas fitter upgrader and prep for your interprovincial A and B gas, and then cross connection as well. So them are kind of some of the Con Ed ones that we have. And there's talk about
fifth year of the trades type of thing. How to, like, I don't like the term, but often it gets kicked as soft skills, right? So that's those people skills, like, can you meet in the middle? Can you negotiate? Can you, right? right? So that's something that we were looking at sort of before the world got broken, was how would we put together a 5th year for the trades type of thing.
Okay.
So I think there's a huge demand for it. It's just like Derrick was alluding to, there's a lot of checks and balances have to go into developing a program like that. So I'm optimistic though, once we get back to business, that hopefully if we can get that developed, I think there'll be demand for it.
Another thing that I hear often is everybody's nervous about what's going to happen in 10, 15 years, that they believe that there's going to be a shortage of tradespeople. How do you guys see that? Do you guys see enough people coming in that will actually overcome what we're losing?
Like our apprenticeship numbers, they're governed by AIT, so they know how many apprentices are in plumbing and all the pipe trades, and then they allocate seats to each one of the training providers. And right now it's kind of dipped a bit, and it kind of it fluctuates with the market and stuff. So we're always a year or two behind kind of thing as the wave goes up and down. So that's somewhat out of our control, but we do have like pre-employment programs. We do the pipe trades one where they're not apprentices, but they're like the person who doesn't have the skills to get a job and doesn't have a job to get the skills kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So the catch-22. So we put on 3 of them programs a year, and 20 people, 20 students at a time kind of thing. So kind of adds to the market a little bit, but that's about the extent of how we can help out with it.
But it feels like there's pretty good demand for it.
Oh yeah,
I think, Jeff, are you talking about like the baby boomers kind of finally
Exactly,
retiring
yeah.
and then that gap getting filled?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing that I hear is like even like our ratios are going out the window, and we're 3 journeymen for 1 apprentice at some places, and stuff like that. And it's like, man, what are we going to do? How are we going to inspire people to get into this, right? And again, like leading into that different designation for things where people will be like, well, I'd like to get into plumbing, but I don't want to go put in cast iron pipe all day. Like that sucks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But like you're alluding to there before with the more technologically advanced boilers and stuff and controls and stuff, it's more like you use your laptop and stuff more on the job and, kind of thing. That's kind of a selling feature, I think, for some of the younger people out there. And you can only... That's the selling feature, hauling cast and pipe and crawling around in a crawl space. That's not really a selling feature.
Yeah.
That's how you get there. I think it depends who you're selling it to. Like for these pre-employment programs that Derrick was talking about, oftentimes we're speaking to parents, right? So sometimes they want their kid to get in the mud, lift heavy things, right? So they can earn it, so they understand like, yeah, I have a boat because I used to crawl around in the mud. Get in the mud. And then one day you can use the laptop on the job, but you gotta, I think that's sort of the charm of the trades that sometimes gets left out of the conversation, is that you have to work your way up.
Yeah.
Right.
So on that note, what do you guys think about in order to get your ticket, you would have to spend a certain amount of time in different facets of the industry, like residential, commercial, industrial /service?
100% agree.
Because I used to hire 4th years that couldn't lay out trench drains. Yeah. And it's like, there's the prints and the scale rule, go do it. And they're like, man, nobody's ever let me do that before. Like, can you help me? And I'm like, really?
Yeah, exactly.
I push that pretty hard. Usually like we have information nights at SAIT. So if people they're considering a career in the trades, they come in and you kind of do your spiel about, this is my story, this is how I made my way to where I am. And I genuinely tried every different aspect. Like I'm a steam fitter, pipe fitter by trade. So I tried all of the things I could possibly do. I worked in a fab shop. I worked on a pipeline.
But was that your decision, or was that
Well, that
push
was-
from the company?
No, that was, no, I changed companies a lot, but I got that advice from one of my first year instructors at SAIT, actually. It was like, try everything while you're an apprentice. This is when you're allowed to make mistakes. Go in there and tell them you don't know how to do it. Because once you get your ticket, the expectation is you better know how to lay trench drains.
Yes.
Because you're getting paid $50 an hour. So if you don't know how to do that, then here's a shovel. You just got demoted. You know what I mean? So, and it's that quick.
Yeah.
Right? So,
And you know, that it's funny because that used to be something that I looked negatively upon getting a resume, was somebody who had high turnover in jobs. Now I'm sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, man, that's probably really good that they've done this because of that.
especially if you want to one day start your own company, like we were speaking about earlier. So then you've got a bit of a scope on how all the different facets of any one particular pipe trade or industry works, right? Because if all you've done is hydronics or towers or built plants up north, you don't know how to, like, I don't know how to do plumbing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just
and,
don't.
And that's where I'm like, that's where it's really tough getting that plumbing ticket.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of like for myself, when I used to, before SAIT, at my old job, I would run bigger jobs and stuff. And with my crew and stuff, that's kind of what I would try to do instead of keeping it just a factory line kind of thing. Because my mentality was always like, if these people are going to stay with me, job to job kind of thing, I want them to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
You know, kind of thing. The more well-rounded they are, the better it is for me. Like,
And that's what we used to try and explain to everybody was, don't just take the work that you're comfortable with, because when times get tough and we have to start taking on jobs we're not used to taking, I'm only going to be able to keep the people who know how to do that for efficiency, because we're going to be so tight.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But do you think that that's something that, like, that the employers need to be kind of held to, or is that the employee's responsibility?
Well, it's in the blue book. Actually, if you look in the, like, blue books will be obsolete soon, I have no doubt. But if you look in it, there's all those boxes you're meant to tick, right?
Yeah.
Can you thread pipe? Can you weld pipe? It's this much % of your time for your first year was meant to be taken up by performing all these different tasks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I mean, we had this conversation yet on our last show, and with a couple other individuals where, you know, you have someone who's worked on, let's say, what did you call them, high rise plumbers or tower plumbers, where they, like, all they're doing is drilling pilot holes for 3 months in the summer, and then they get laid off when that, you know, job's done, but their blue book's signed, right? Yeah. And they've got the hours, right? And it's that kind of, like, you know, where does that accountability come from? Is that,
Well, I guess that's where I'm really looking. Like, is it the responsibility of the employer to say, yes, we need to be profitable, right? And I guess that's also why I'm really pushing for more business training in the business. So it's kind of like, I've got a toolbox and a truck, so therefore I can start a business. And the only way I'm going to get to be a big company is if I'm the lowest person for the next 10 years. Right. Versus now, if we actually make the employers say, okay, these guys have to do it, because even though we have blue books, like, how many people just check the boxes, right?
Yeah.
So how do we make it accountable so that these apprentices are getting that training, right? Because there's such a stigma about contractors out in the general public, right? Yeah. Like, how many news reports do we get contractors going in and changing out a furnace that only needed a new board?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think they do Dateline specials on that
Exactly.
anymore to catch a contractor.
I think that to look at the way that the apprenticeship system is actually set up, like, if you zoom way out and look at the big picture, to see, like, you know, you work for 10 months, you come to school for 2 months. That's the way it's set up. Some people go back to back. Some people do all their work up front and then go do all the schooling. You know, there's ways that you can kind of slip through and do that. But in other countries, Europe has a completely different apprenticeship system. Australia, they go every 2 weeks, I think. So there's different ways. So if you just think about that, and if you kind of go a little bit more hands-on from the systems perspective maybe, and say, okay, Billy, good, you've done some residential. After your 2-week round this time, you're going to that. You're going in this aspect of the company, and you're going to go do some commercial or something like that, right? But it'd have to be a little more heavy-handed, I think, from the
like regulatory bodies themselves. Right. And that's kind of where, I think Jeff and I were curious more so, Jeff, is that if we zoom out and look at it from, I'm guessing it comes from either a provincial or a federal level, I'm assuming, and like what kind of new bylaws or changes can they make to maybe make the apprenticeship program a bit more accountable such that it's not all left to what the employee in that scenario or the apprentice in that scenario can get, because in a down economy, they're going to get whatever job they want and they can find. And if it just so happens that particular employer has nothing for them to do other than drill pilot holes, for example, then they're SOL, right? Like
skilled labor.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And it's like, well, interesting to hear about, other countries' apprenticeship programs. And I mean, the idea of theoretical knowledge, hands-on training, like actual training versus applying that in the field all simultaneously, almost like because that's the way, I know that my father went through a polytechnic program where he did it was like a mechanical engineering technologist or something like that way back in the day in India. And it was like, he said it was a month or 2 months, and then it would be 2 months in the factory, then 2 months on the job, and then 2 months on a site. And it was, in school. So it was just like they call it a sandwich course. So they would just keep shuffling back and forth from work to school to, case study to school. So it's just interesting that is it North America that does it the 10 and 2 pretty much across the board, or?
I don't even think there's a proper apprenticeship system in the United States, to be honest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Canada.
So do they just kind of have it as like a basic, you go through and when they think you're ready, there's a test that you can challenge? Is that kind of how they do it there?
I don't want to speak to that. I'm not, I haven't really read up on it. But
Yeah, we'd have to look into that a bit more.
Yeah.
I do you guys work with other countries or study other countries' methods before like changing curriculum or adjusting curriculum out here?
No. The curriculum, I guess the outline that we teach to kind of thing comes from AIT and the Provincial Apprenticeship Committee. So they kind of set up, they form what a plumber needs to learn kind of thing. And then every 4 years, I think, they review it and stuff and make sure it's, up to date kind of thing. And then basically stamp it, send it off to us, and then we just kind of follow that along kind of thing and build our curriculum to that kind of thing.
yeah, and then augment the shops and stuff to make sure if there's any new performance objectives or like where you have to actually fabricate something or whatever, then we'll have to change out the projects and that type of thing.
Yep.
In line with that. But yeah, it comes from the province.
And do you guys stay current or like even kind of get into the future more as technologies change? Like one thing we talked about off camera was as fusion piping is becoming more and more, is that something where you work with those new products right away?
Maybe not right away kind of thing, but, try to implement them, as we can sort of thing. Because we have to develop the projects and stuff and get the tools if we don't have them and that, and then kind of, work it into the system kind of thing. So it's not like a instant thing. It's,
That's probably the number one place where we have opportunities to partner with industry, really, right?
Yeah.
If there's a new thing, typically.
Yeah. And that's how I know Derrick and Dylan is that, we had a ton of different, I represented a bunch of different brands and we're like, hey, we want students to learn some of these, I know there's traditional ways of doing stuff, but then there's also these new technologies that, cut down on labor or have a better lifespan or durability, whatever it is, or it's a new technology completely that, like the fusion piping or a new type of condensing fire tube boiler or whatever it may be. And I think that's where you really need to look at the industry, the manufacturers, the suppliers out there to put their kind of neck out and donate, because a lot of it is budget constraints, right?
Certainly, yeah. And then there's a set amount of hours that we deliver per apprenticeship year, And then, but it's guidelines, right? There's set objectives, but it's how you interpret it, right? So if we get a new product that lines up with objective X, then the instructions say, hey, we just got this new gizmo. This is how it works. So when you get out into the big bad world, you're going to run into these. You could see the old one or see the new one, and then you pass it around. You might have a lab with it, but typically we don't get like a crate of the new gizmo, right? So it'll be more like show and tell versus we're going to actually integrate it into one of the projects. But
if somebody was to offer to donate that, like these manufacturers, is that something that SAIT would be open to rolling in and showing and having people be able to work with that stuff?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We do that.
Do you guys does SAIT get sponsorship already from companies?
Yeah.
I don't know if sponsorship
Like
would,
donations.
donations.
Yeah.
And then the tax receipts is gift in kind and stuff. Like it's all very above the board, right? Because you can't play favorites, right? It's a public institution, so you have to toe the line on that. But absolutely, yeah, we have partnerships. Right?
I mean, when I worked at Wade, we one of the big things was we wanted to get apprentices and people coming through the ranks. I mean, and it's a interesting thing for the manufacturer as well, because you want students to learn using your brand product, and that's the benefit. One benefit for them outside of course, the tax benefits and whatnot. But I mean, I remember Greg Gillespie, who we've chatted with on the podcast. We donated a bunch of closet carriers and lav carriers and trench drain for the drainage lab that's at SAIT. And somebody posted a photo recently of doing closet carrier training. I was like, I sent that to Greg. I said, hey, look, it's some of the stuff that we donated back 6 years ago or whatever, right? And it's like, some of that stuff, if it's timeless, like certain things like cast iron drainage or accessories around that stuff is going to last a long time. It doesn't really change every weekend, right? Whereas things like boilers, you really want to wink at the camera and go, manufacturers, hey, it's always nice to get new shiny equipment that is what do you call it? They're breakthrough technologies in the industry, and people want to learn with it, and we wonder. I mean, we talk about this a lot. It's like, why does it take so much time for technology to get from Europe or Korea or Japan, where they're miles ahead, to North America, which is supposed to be a place of modernity and technological advancement? But a lot of it stems from barriers to entry, with incumbents and whole economics thing. But a lot of it is also, you come out of school and you see something that's new and it's unfamiliar, so you're hesitant to adopt it, right? But if a lot of these industry folks or manufacturers are able to bring that technology into the schools and across the board, and this isn't a individual SAIT thing, it's across the board. Any and every technical college should have access to the latest technology, so that people are familiar with it and people understand it, and they're not perplexed when they get to a job site and it's just like, I have no idea what this is. But
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that might actually make them more employable if they have those specialty or those new things that I've worked with that, right?
Yeah.
As companies are expanding and doing things differently to try and stay up to relevant within certain industries, right?
Yeah.
So I guess was that the point? Was if we had more manufacturers donating things?
no, I think. Hey, I'm just doing a plug. I don't want to put you guys out there to do it, but I'll do the plug for you. Hey, education is always important, so get on it, folks. You guys will be receiving quite a few donations now. So. I think as a whole for the industry, that's important, right? It doesn't matter if it's SAIT. I think it matters across the country, across North America as a whole.
Yeah. Now you guys also have a passive house model on site at SAIT campus as well.
Yeah.
And is that open to anybody to come through? Like obviously not right now, but when things start picking up, is that something that you open up to anybody out there to come and walk through?
Probably book in. I don't see why they wouldn't. You could book into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had some of the instructors take students through there too, kind of thing, for a tour and stuff. I can't see why. I think they like to show it off, kind of thing. Like it's a.
What about like end users? So like if somebody's building a house and they're like, I want to know about this, right? Is that something that that would be able, that they could kind of make an appointment and go through this?
I'll go on a limb and say absolutely. Yeah. If someone out there wants to come see the passive house on the corner of 16th Avenue and 14th Street, email me. I'll help you get in there and check it out. Like we would never turn someone away from coming and check that out.
Well, then the reason I ask is I'm trying to figure out a way. Like we seem to build all these things to minimum specs right now, and I see a lot of people saying, oh, if I, like they buy their house and they're like, oh, I wish I would have known about that, right? Like. And it's like, well, it probably would have cost you $25,000 or $30,000 more for that. Would you have still been interested? Well, yeah, that's only $1,000 a year more on my mortgage, right? Yeah, I would have done that if I was going to save 10% on my heating costs, right?
Over that time,
Yeah. So like, how do we educate the end user so that we push the specs to a better built house, right? So one of those things was like making that aware, because the only time I ever see passive houses in the general public are on trade shows, and it's like they get to walk through and everybody's kind of pushing them from behind, so they can't actually learn about it. It's just kind of like, oh well, this looks all like what I have like anyway.
Regular house.
They don't actually know what's going into that house.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a lot of people, the people that work downtown who have nothing to do with construction or trades, like they're looking at the specs that are on the table and they're picking their dream home, or whatever, right? Like they're not necessarily thinking about ways to be more efficient, right? I honestly think, like, at the risk of sounding maybe a little bit jaded, that it's more systemic than that. Like, it's the developers, right? And it's I don't want to say like the old boys club, but like there's a lot of room for disruption in development and construction industry in general, right? Like these are handshakes that got made 10 years ago on these parcels of land with builder X, and they're going to do it cheap.
But now you, as a tradesperson, if you're building a house, how important is that to you? Because you're educated with it, right? Like, is that something that you would say, no, I want this in there and I want this in there, right?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Yeah, I would. Like, if I would personally, I'd like to be completely off the grid. Like that would be amazing. Right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of barriers, that they don't want you to be off the grid necessarily, right?
Yeah. But so educating that general public to drive that home and make the builders offer something different, because I guess that was the one thing that always bothered me as a manufacturer's rep, was like hydronics is so much more efficient. Like, why are your salespeople like, what if I gave you a video that they just had to push play? They didn't even have to know anything about it. They just push play. And how many people would opt to go with that just because of that 2-minute video was like, oh, this is going to be more comfortable and I'm going to pay less money. I want to know more about that. Right. Instead of just saying, what color do you want your sink and toilet package?
Right. We talk about this. It's like everything is fashion. What looks good, what fits well in the catalog, right? There's nothing, you never see what's behind the drywall or what's under the floor, right? There's no conversation about that.
Well, I get the original part of this is setting up those opportunities for end users to come and get educated from our technical schools, and kind of bringing that together, I think would be a great start to pushing the builders to offer better options for building. Right.
Almost like a this is something that I was thinking of as Jeff kind of started this topic, is like are you buying your first home or buying a home 101? What to look for? Mechanical systems, windows, insulation, building envelope, roofing. Like, what are the different things that you want to look at? Energy, electrical.
Is this house for you, or is it for a renter, or is it like how long do you want to live in?
Price point,
exactly.
kind of thing
like
too,
trying to
right?
teach.
First time home buyers are kind of like, just I need to get in instead of paying rent, and then as you.
But I mean, we're looking at creative ways of changing mortgage regulations based on, like, hey, maybe you could get a 30-year mortgage because the house is this efficient or built with this, right? So I guess trying to have a creative solution in order to promote that, right?
Right.
I mean, a lot of it really starts at the demand, right? Where, because the consumer, the customer, they determine what, and that's what, I mean, we put this question to builders, they're going to say, well, the customers don't care. Right. And that's really what they're going to say, because the customer wants the nice shiny granite countertop and these blinds, and they want, what they do know about the mechanical is that they want that nice shiny smart thermostat. That's the extent of their knowledge on the mechanical. For not everybody as a generalization, but
let's
a lot of them.
If
right. I mean, Tom right there, he's like, yeah, that's me. Right.
If you do a study, I think like somebody phoned like 5,000 homeowners and asked them what kind of furnace they had. And I think it was like 93% said, oh, I've got a Honeywell furnace.
Thank you.
Because that's what their thermostat said, right? and that was kind of it. And we bug all the new homeowners of not doing service. And they're like, well, we didn't know we had to.
Yeah.
Right? So
It's kind of
Filters
chicken and egg,
plugged.
right?
and that's why I say, like, we got to, I think for our industry to kind of excel beyond just offering that minimum, we have to get creative outside to educate the general homeowners. Because I think this year we're building 5,000 new condos, I just read the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And they're talking about a saturated market. And all of these builders are building to minimum grade. So what separates a homeowner that's going to look at living in that downtown condo for 20 years versus somebody who's buying it as an investment property? Because I think those factors are going to shape the way that we're purchasing now. People are starting to understand green, right? We have to be better. We have to.
It's geography too. Like we're in Alberta. Look at the economy. Everyone talks about growth and the economy, right? But what about sustainability and the economy? Like, does everyone really need a raise every year, or can we just be content with what I made last year? And but it's not the way we're programmed to think, right? It's not the way our culture really operates. Right?
Yeah.
People want to keep up with the Joneses and get a raise and be their boss's boss and all those things, right? So it's part of what you have to consider if you're really thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And how does, I should say, sustainability kind of leach into your guys' curriculum somehow with just in general? Like greener technologies, that kind of stuff. Like, how does that play into your guys' programs?
I'm trying to think of some of the outlines that might have a little bit in it.
Yeah, I think in the steam fitting outline, there's a bit of stuff about geothermal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They touch on it, right? Well, and then, the high efficient boilers and stuff like that, that's obviously greener or more sustainable. But
Thinking of it more from a perspective of like, so again, I'm going to do kind of what you said earlier, Dylan, which is kind of zoom out and look at it from the governance perspective. I mean, there's so much federally conversation about carbon tax, this, that, sustainability, and like pushing towards that. And then on a provincial level, whether it exists or not, but I think a lot of people agree that sustainability isn't a bad thing, right? But if that doesn't trickle its way down into the training programs for the people that are coming up in the construction industry, right? And I think that's maybe where the onus lies, is that the government or the apprenticeship body that kind of dictates what goes and what doesn't, and what should be a part of the curriculum. Almost sustainability needs to be a part of that, right? And so and at the end of the day, also being able to integrate. Sustainability doesn't necessarily mean that something is just green. It can also be, it's greener to make, greener to get somewhere, but also greener to operate, and then easier to sell, right? Because that's at the end of the day, your product will be easier to sell, right? Because if I have a home that's a passive house, people are going to be lining up as opposed to just a regular home, right? And it's like understanding that choosing.
It's funny you say that. Like that is what I mean about somebody building a house on their own. They're going to make it passive, and therefore it's going to sell faster. But then we're stuck in a spec house world where nobody's doing that, even though we know it'll sell faster.
Yeah.
Well, I'm starting to feel like I'm like the conspiracy guy.
No, go for it. Go for it.
If you think about
We'll get
it,
Tom too excited over there. You start saying conspiracy too much.
like the Warren Buffetts,
Yeah.
they're into obsolescence. Like, they want your house to break.
Yeah.
They want you, and they want to sell you the backhoe that knocks it down. And they're going to buy the dump where you burn it. They're going to sell you the timber to build the new one. it's going to have it's a ticking time bomb until it breaks. Like that's growth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a continuous cycle, and I think that being able to identify kind of where we, where are we going to be integrating that value, and how do we come back and give tell the homeowner, and that's kind of where pulling it back to kind of what you were saying, Jeff, is that trying to get the homeowner to understand what you see when you walk into a home doesn't matter at all. The paint, the drapes, the countertops, the faucet, the toilet, none of that matters, right? And peel it back and take a look. And that's where it's like we need to train. And you guys have the infrastructure. You guys have the setup, the labs, you guys have, what's behind the drywall.
Yeah.
All exposed for everyone to see. And it's like almost maybe there's an opportunity for us to do something where we can bring a bunch of, new homeowners, people that are, in that, millennials generation, Gen Z generation, right? Future new homeowners, right?
That decision,
right? And teach them like, this is what a single stage furnace is. When you and Jeff uses this good example. It's like when you drive, do you just step on the gas and it just goes with no gears? Like, no, things, you have to ramp up. And is that how you want your home comfort to operate? And that goes for whether it's heating or
everybody understands fuel efficiency when it comes to their car because we've been programmed to understand what fuel efficiency was, right? When you talk about living off the grid completely, I'm shocked that we don't have regulations that are monitoring combustion, right? Like, okay, in order to build this house, you have to be at 97, 98, or you're even today, like if we're going to carbon tax everything, put that money towards rebates for upgrading the efficiency on your building, right? Don't just be like, oh, well, that's a carbon tax and we're going to take that because we need it,
Spend
right?
it somewhere else.
But I mean, Alberta is, I think that when people can justify, okay, I have to change my furnace out or I have to change my boiler out and,
Once it's ready, then have an incentive to go for the green efficient one makes sense, right? Like,
well, and it's a model that BC and Ontario used to great success, right? Like, I mean, we were putting in back when electricity was a bit cheaper in BC. People were nobody bought an air conditioner. Everything was heat pump. Like it was just. And heat pumps went down to minus 25 and, there were COP ratings of like 4.3 on a residential system. You're like, what's going on here, right? But now it's kind of like getting off the grid and making sure those efficiencies and, even how you put things together now. It's like, no, you get a rebate, the more efficient it is, right? And I think people then do the research. Right now we've got tradespeople that aren't sure about it. So like the tankless versus tank, a lot of tradespeople in Alberta are just like, oh, we just put a tank in, right? Because I don't want to have to sell them a tankless water heater and a water softener, right? Like it's too much money. They'll never go for it. Right. So they just don't even bring it up to the homeowner because their mentality is I've got to be cheaper than my 3 other competitors.
Right.
Right.
And that's what they've done kind of thing. That's
Status quo.
Yeah.
Do what you know kind of thing.
But if we had educated homeowners that now they would push for it, right? Like instead of being that one person who knows what building a greenhouse would be.
Yeah. I think that's what it's going to take is like we said before, the demand needs to be there to kind of push contractors and builders and that to.
So do you think like maybe even making a regulation for every area they're building a new house that one of the show homes has to be?
Ooh, good idea.
Yeah.
Right? So
start with one, and go from there.
Yeah, because they're building different packages for, higher efficiency fridge or, stainless steel versus white, right?
You think like earlier I said it's part to do with geography as well, right? Like it's no secret what drives the Albertan economy, right?
Yeah.
So my uncle and my dad and all my cousins work in the patch. Yeah, give me the heavy Hagen furnace. I don't care. I need to burn gas, right? I gotta make sure Uncle Bob can buy new tires for the winter or whatever, right? Like that's sort of the mentality that's ingrained in us.
Yep.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just the way that
Yeah.
Well, and things
way
in
that it works
Alberta are relatively cheaper than a lot of the other provinces, right? Like I get my gas and power bill. It's as cheap, or it's as expensive as my apartment was in Vancouver. And I'm like, man, I'm getting a hot tub. Like, it is cheap out here. So, but again, but if there was rebates for something, that it'd be like, yeah, I'm going to get that tankless water here. I've done my research. Like, if you don't want to quote it to me, fine, you're not getting the job.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the wave just kind of takes over because
Yeah.
that's the way the world's going, is more green and efficient and stuff. It's just going to take a little bit to get that wave going.
We had one guest on who did our solar with Nathan, and they were actually getting into even the wind technology that you could use commercially and residentially.
Oh, really?
And
Pretty
that
neat.
It was
It's
like,
like this little, it just looks like, kind of looks like a flame.
it looked like a drill bit, right?
Yeah.
Where it
Yeah.
was
That's probably.
I've seen those.
yeah. And
just-
it was like, yeah, fantastic. We don't care about sun now. We just need wind occasionally.
And we got tons of wind out here, right?
I live in Airdrie, and it was pretty windy the last couple of weeks.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, and I want to maybe pivot from there to talking about we talk about new technology coming in. There's a lot of heritage legacy technology that slowly starts to become less and less, relevant on sites. I'll use an example. I mean, copper more and more is starting to be seen as a very specialty application, and I'm sure in maybe a decade or two, it's going to be a hipster thing, right? I run copper, and it's like, because we look at it 20 years from now, it's all the apprentices that are coming through the program now that are going to be out in the field, and everybody's using either the polypropylene fusion or PEX or something else. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I like copper. I just like the look and stuff of it. Like, it's just a personal preference, or like working
Hipster.
with it.
It's funny, when ProPress first came out, I was like, no, I'll solder. Like, get that crap out of here.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And now it's like, man, I remember freezing pipes at 3 a.m. because we had to, just so I could solder this joint, and there wasn't enough whole grain bread in the building to stop that old gate valve from leaking. And I'm like, man, I wish I had one of those ProPress, right?
Yeah.
So
the technology is like, well, it's awesome, really. Like, like you say, just a little bit of water coming through, and you're never going to solder that joint.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like, whereas if you press it, it can be flowing.
Oh, exactly.
Crimp, and you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that when we look at kind of the way that the education is constantly changing, is that something that you think will ever be kind of phased out? Or do you see that? I mean, it's always a part of the basic education. And I know that
Copper and that?
copper and any of the other...
Some of the stuff that
like even like cast iron pipe, for example, it is something that's very specific.
Lead and oakum joints.
That's what I was just thinking. Like, it'll become a specialty, right? I think there'll always be a spot for it in the, in the outlines and in the education. I can't see them just abandoning it.
Of course.
Entirely. But I think absolutely, as things progress, it'll become a bit of a background item. And it'll just be like, there'll be that kid in the class who's like, I solder all the time. I'm a solder wizard. And he'll be like super proud of it. And everyone else will be like, strange.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny. I worked with this plumber from Germany, and he, like, total old school guy. He would solder, and it was just his thumb on his joints to wipe his joints. Oof. And I was like, man, like how thick is that callus? Like,
how's the lead content in your blood?
Exactly. But no, you just sit there and I was like, you're not actually cleaning the flux off the joint, right? You're just like
leaving your skin on there.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like, man, like, we got to introduce you to something else, because I don't want to be responsible for that one. No. And I wasn't the safest plumber as it was. Like, WCB was a great white buffalo when I was plumbing. Like, you knew they existed, but you never saw them. Now I don't think I can wear my sound.
Oh, okay. It's time for a rapid fire. So today we're going to go for about a minute. We're going to switch questions one after another. The reason we're doing this is just that for our audience to get to know you guys a little bit more. So you get 3 seconds per question. We'll go first with you, Derrick, and then the second one will be to you, Dylan. Okay. Say the first thing that comes to your mind. No passes, no Google, no lifelines. Ready?
Yep.
All right. Boxers or briefs?
Boxers.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Tim's or Starbucks?
Tim's.
Car, truck, or bike?
Truck.
Beef, fish, or hippie?
Beef.
Union or non-union?
Non-union.
Ooh. Apple or Android?
Android.
Oh, yes, with the power. Shoes or sandals?
This show is brought to you by
Sandals.
Apple.
Sandals. See? I feel it. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Masks or no masks?
Like COVID mask?
COVID masks. Yeah.
General. COVID.
No mask.
No mask. Ski or surf?
Surf.
Stampede. Love it or hate it?
Hate it.
So what do? You just get out of town?
I don't live in the city.
Oh, there you go.
This is what I want to hear this one from both of you guys. Gas or electric?
Same time. 1,
Gas.
2, 3.
Gas.
Gas.
Yeah.
We've had a plumber here come in and say electric. So you surprised us. Digital or analog?
Analog.
Digital.
Ooh, you're old school, but digital. I like it.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
You know.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, as we kind of go towards the, kind of the culmination of the conversation today, I wanted to maybe put a couple questions to you guys. Something that we've been, asking some of our guests just to get a little bit of understanding about your background.
This is gonna be really deep here.
No, it's not. It's always deep. That's all hands. Tom, get the ukulele out. Let's go. You guys have been in the trades prior to getting into the academic side of things, and I'm sure you guys have, seen some shit, both great and bad. I wanted to maybe put this question to you guys both, and we can hear your guys' answer. Like, what was your worst day on the job? What comes to mind?
Or in school,
or in school, yeah, or in school, or while teaching. Who wants to go first? All right, Dylan, we'll start with you because Tom's like, Dylan first.
Worst day on the job? I was thinking about this one. I was on a turnaround. I was this mechanical superintendent for the prime mechanical contractor on this site, this plant site. And you know how turnarounds work. They bring in a whole bunch of other contractors. Like they turn a normally operating plant into an anthill, right? So now there's 300-400 extra people there, if not more. And so they divvy up the plant into quadrants or whatever, and different contractors get different areas. Everyone's performing similar type work, but they divvy it up. So I was walking around checking on one of my areas, and I went through a different area, and the superintendent that was overseeing that area, he was standing there watching all of his hands trying to bolt up a whole mess of piping, and but they had already pressured it up, like they were trying to put it on hydro, like on a hydro test, and it was just like a spray park, right? But it was actually the amine. It was a sour gas plant, so it was like the amine sort of area. So it's pretty stinky and gross. The piping is old, like I'm talking 50-year-old. I felt bad for the guy. He's a cool guy, right? He's a superintendent. He's pulling his hair out. So I was like, well, let's just start going. So I just we grabbed wrenches and we just climbed up there and started the bolt up. They were missing studs. It was crazy. So but it was pressured up. So I was up there with, in my coveralls. I'm the boss.
Yeah.
It's not even my area. And me and him are up there together doing bolt up on 12-inch lines and stuff with just gross produced yucky amine water squirting in my face. Reflecting back, I stunk for 3 days. Oh. So that was probably, that's up there with probably the worst.
What about your best day?
Well.
And again, it can be now.
It was the same day.
Payday. Yeah, I've had some pretty rewarding experiences at work for sure. And I know this might sound corny, but it's true. I've helped people out that really wanted to get an apprenticeship and really wanted to get a career going, but they were, the janitor or whatever on that sort of thing. So I told them well, get all that done and I'll get you over here. We'll get you starting to move material around. Here's a clipboard, tick off all the boxes, showed them how pipe was measured. And I needed to receive all these fittings and kind of helped people guide them into the trade and told them if they all, if they made all their shifts and they were here and they did this, and they dangle a bit of an apprenticeship carrot, and then they showed up. So then I've got to award people apprenticeships basically that way. So those are cool experiences, right? When you can help people kind of out of a situation in their life where they can peg up.
Yep. And then they become skilled. And then they gain skills, and then that translates into future, growth personally and professionally, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, and to tag on top of that, now you're kind of on the, helping it and giving to so many more people as kind of guiding it, a bunch of apprentices academically, right? For both of you. Yeah. It's pretty neat. Derrick, you're up. Worst day on the job.
Oh yeah. I thought about this one too. Trauma. So I was doing a couple towers there, 24-story or whatever towers, and one was just recently completed. We were working on the other one, and I was running it and stuff. So they started moving people in on the first one, and then I was actually going to end of the day from downtown, going home to Airdrie just to get over the flyover there, and my phone rings. I was going to see my then girlfriend to go out for dinner with her that night at SAIT at the Highwood or whatever, fancy dinner and stuff like that. I get this call. There's shit everywhere on the third floor. I'm like, oh. Yeah, it wasn't great. Turn around, come there. Oh my God, looks like the Exorcist in there. Ooh. So start cleaning up and stuff, and okay, what's going on? So that was the third floor. So anybody that's done towers and stuff, everything comes down through the third floor and then over and down usually, kind of thing. So we get underneath the third floor there, and okay, open. Yeah, it's coming through there too, through all the holes. And then so we open up the hole, and I had been there for a year and a half or whatever. So yeah, I know where everything is, kind of thing. Yeah, Kate, so we'll cut it here, get up there. Kate, so, I guess we did tell everybody there's 3 or 4 different units there. So, okay, don't use any water. Don't use the toilet either.
Please don't use the toilet.
Don't use the toilet. So, get underneath there. Okay, yeah. Kind of in a stress situation. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it there. Take the Y45 off and clean out. Take it off. There's nothing there. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm kind of freaking out. Look over. No, that wasn't it. Put it back on. Take this other one out. And sure enough, somebody had a little piece of 2x4 or whatever piece of wood down there, and it just kind of, few people using it, and it just kind of made its way up.
Backed up.
Whoa.
Backed up. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Man.
yeah. So that was a few hours. Didn't get to go out for dinner either.
Probably didn't want to go out for dinner.
No, that wasn't a good day.
I've somehow lost my appetite.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
What about best day?
Best day. A couple when I finish up the projects and stuff and be done, and it's the owners have taken it over and stuff like that. That was a pretty good feeling that it all came to work and stuff and worked out all right. So
I always feel sorry for tradespeople's kids that every time you drive by, it's like, I built that.
Yeah.
I built that one too. Yeah.
It's a very unique sense of accomplishment that tradespeople get to have when you can actually point at your efforts and your hard work.
Oh, I'm
right?
so guilty of that.
I mean, I would
like,
do it.
My wife, now we start driving up. It's like, yes, I know you built that one. Yeah, congratulations.
Exactly.
I've only really, for me, it's like, hey, we supplied some equipment for this. I've seen it. And for me, it's like, I've seen the underbelly of this particular hospital before it was built. And that's like the cool thing for somebody who's not in the trades like myself. It's like, we got this big tower downtown here. I think it's the Sky Tower. And I remember seeing it 7 stories deep into the ground.
Yeah.
And you look down and, you know, I like to say you look down and you can see Satan waving back at you from down there, right? Like it's incredible, some of the stuff that tradespeople get to see, get to experience. And I mean, some days are shit, literally,
Yeah.
right? And some days are just so rewarding when whether you're helping someone, you know, find their future, or whether it's just, you know, that sense of accomplishment when you wrap something up that you've been working on, not for a week or two, like most people do with certain projects, where it's like a year or two. And in some cases it's 5 years if you're building a stadium or a hospital or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And that sense of accomplishment is really unique, that, you know, individuals in the trades get to. And speaking of individuals in the trades, I maybe wanted to have you guys.
I want to ask one more question before we get into the last segment. We talk about end user education, and the one thing that really comes to mind on this, and I was not going to ask, but I'm going to now, is. Well, because Alberta is such a oil-driven province, and it's something that's very big. We're building that one pipeline, or replacing a pipeline going from Alberta to BC, and there was such a big
Twinning it.
Yeah. And it was such a big uproar because it's going to be a bigger pipe, and it's going to, like, you know, it's right alongside of it. And one thing that I really felt that the industry did a very poor job, and I don't know if it was the industry, if it's the owners of the pipeline, which now happens to be the government.
It's us, guys.
But one thing that I felt really could have overcome a lot of the negativity around the pipeline, again, was educating all of the people out there, right? And the taxpayers that are out there, and saying, you know, pipe has a life expectancy, right? What we're actually replacing, it's something that is built and it's already too late. Like we've already exceeded the life expectancy of this pipeline, and it's already breaking. And the new pipe out there has so many better things. Like we have sensors in the pipe when the wall breaks down. We've got now shut-off stations where when we do have too much of a pressure loss, it locks it out. Like there's so many things that we could have educated the general public. And like, do you think that's something that we should be doing as an industry, or as the companies that own that, or?
Yeah, like anything, education of like what's actually going in the ground. Like, instead of the, you know, there's the people out there that scare everybody. Oh, pipeline and pipeline leaks and stuff. Like, it happens and stuff, but so do car accidents and stuff like that. Like, everything's improving that much more, kind of thing. For me, it's a necessity kind of thing. Like, we need the pipeline. The other one's old. Like, we need to replace it, right? So, like, it should be, you know, put out there that, yeah, the pipe is way better, and these are some of the things that are new and improved, kind of thing.
Do you think that's something that the government should proactively be having an information? And I do this again. I'm really passionate about having the general public have access to resources for information, right? Like building a house, I would say, like, if you're putting in a furnace with this kind of stuff, this is what your average per square foot cost of operation should be. If you put in a furnace or electric baseboard or a boiler, or you give them, this is what your cost of operating is going to be. This is the efficiency level of those things, right? If we do that with pipeline, and it not like Canadian government horrible website, 25 different pages to get the answer you're looking for, but something that we could educate and have resources for people to make educated decisions on. Okay, I hate that we're still using oil. We obviously still need to use oil. I don't want a pipeline, but I understand why we need a new pipeline.
I think that it's super valid conversation, and I think that it maybe needs to shift a bit from the consumer standpoint. Like, we're not driving the boat, you know, we're passengers, right? But there's other fuel sources, right? So that's obvious as the day is long. Like, there's solar, there's wind, there's geothermal, there's nuclear, there's a million different ways you could tie those all together and probably get away from burning coal or burning gas or burning oil for that matter.
Yep.
But that doesn't negate the fact that there's a petrochemical industry that makes all of this happen.
Yep.
Like, can't have this, can't have these, can't have glasses, my shirt's plastic. Like, this all comes from natural gas. So but they don't talk about that when they're protesting the pipelines, because they're talking about climate change, because they're talking about burning coal and digging up the tar sands and all that. But the focus needs to shift. Like, they're live streaming on their gas made phone, right?
Yeah.
And like, believe Derrick knows, all my friends are like, I'm a bit of a hippie, right? Like, I'm probably an anomaly when it comes to the oil and gas industry, right? Which is partly why I got into working at SAIT, because I kind of wanted to try to change it from the inside a bit. I know that sounds corny, but like, that's the difference between, it's not a fuel source, it's a way to make stuff.
No, I completely agree. Like, what infuriated me was everybody protesting, and I was living in Vancouver, just up in North Vancouver, where it's one of the highest transport placements for coal. Uh-huh. And I'm sitting there going, really? Like, we're protesting oil and we're still shipping coal? and we're okay with that. Like, nobody's blocking that terminal.
They probably don't even know.
That's what I mean. And it
Coming
was
in on train cars or whatever.
It's all about what makes a fancy headline.
going out on ships. Like the fact that we're still bringing in oil from the East Coast, from Saudi Arabia and everything, and we have it right here, and we're talking about potential spills, right? I'm 100% agreeable with you in the fact that us as an industry have to really change it. And there's so many things that I think we could be doing better in terms of what products we deliver out there to do this. But how do we do it? And like, do we need to put a governing body where we start putting these ideas together so that we can get it to the public? Like what has to happen in order for us to see some of these great thoughts, maybe like almost expand Alberta's economic development?
Right.
Almost like a industry-funded public service announcement for just the average Joe or the average Jill. Right, like just teaching them about everything from things like how to pick stuff for your home that's more efficient, that is contributing to that sustainable cause, to why this is important, why oil pipelines are important at the moment, because of all because we're being highly inefficient and bringing it in on ships in the East Coast, or our economy is suffering thereby. We can't actually progress to be less dependent on oil. Right, that's the answer. Is you reduce dependence by, growing your economy to a point and having the money and the infrastructure available to be, independent of it.
And just increasing the efficiency as
Absolutely.
You got to hit that critical mass, though, right? That's the thing where there's enough people that are interested in making the shift, right? And it's.
But wouldn't it be nice if there was a resource page where it was like, you know what, like you bring up a lot of good points. A lot of them are answered here, right? Like
fact check, peer reviewed, all that.
Because the one thing I hate about talking with people that are passionate, they want to be green, but they don't know how to get there. And in order to make their case, they don't just have a conversation. They just start yelling their point louder. And they're actually not listening, right? Yeah. I was in Olympic Village in Vancouver one time, and this one girl was going off on global warming. And like, I was trying to have a conversation, and finally I threw out, I don't believe in global warming. I thought
his tinfoil hat on as he said
that. Like trying to hold her back. And I said, like, first of all, I think it's part of a cycle. And she's like, and I said, and I'll tell you why the water's rising. And she just looked at me and she was like, tell me how. And I said, well, there was just that bus full of tourists that are standing on the beach and they're all throwing rocks in the water. Like, where else is the water going to go? And for 20 minutes, she yelled, and finally I broke a smile, and she's like, oh, you son of a bitch.
Oh, man.
But it was kind of like, you get these people that really are passionate about doing it, but don't maybe have all that information and the resources and maybe even a timeline of getting there, right? Vancouver, they came out with Site C Dam, and they're like, oh, we're going to make everything electric. And it's like, well, how much damage to the ecosystem did we do building that? And what are we going to lose in the transmission from that site to Vancouver? Like, are we losing 50% of the electricity generated because of the transmission of that, when we have other resources that maybe we could do smaller dams with closer power that could not affect ecosystems so much, right? Or getting into solar and geothermal and stuff that is going to help us at more of a point of use instead of so far off, right? So
Interesting. This is deep thoughts. Hashtag deep
so
thoughts by Jeff.
This is why I didn't know if I'd bring it up, but it's something that I'm looking for a solution on how we can do that, and I don't know if we get companies that are involved in these projects, or government, or our schools, or who facilitates getting that information together to give the general public a broad understanding without getting a 4-year degree in something. And
everything's so polarized right now, right? That's, I think, probably the primary issue if you really want to, put it on the table. Like, we had a huge wind of change blow through. The NDP was in power in Alberta, right? And then they just flipped everything, right? Cancel coal, shut down the plants, blah, 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 right? And then 4 years later, flip it back.
Yeah.
Everything goes back. So it's like, so now there's two camps, right? Because there are people that were like, wow, that made a lot of sense. Like, I was kind of buying into that. And then they just turn the light off and go back, do a 50-year rewind, right? So now a lot of people are choked, right? So,
and that translates to emotion, right? And then emotion is what I think clouds a lot of, like, people will think and act emotionally as opposed to having that information, the knowledge, the research, and being able to have a conversation based on research. And then it becomes a question of, I'm on this team. And you say it's polarized. I'm on this team, you're on this team, and you're on this team, and we're all disagreeing. But if we actually kind of had the accurate information available to us such that we can see that maybe this, instead of, we have 3 paths, or there's a 4th path that we could take that actually satisfies this, a lot more of the actual criteria.
And the general population, right? There almost be a bipartisan think tank or something where you get, representatives from all different facets of society or something. But it's got to be sponsored by the province or the Fed or however you want to look at it, right? And there would be room for that. The government's got all sorts of different groups that, regardless of what flag's getting waved up in Edmonton, there's the little groups, like all the pundits and that, they stay in their jobs, right? And they don't make decisions based on the policy of the day. They make it based on their their goal, or I can't think of the word right now, like what their mandate is.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if something like that exists or not, like an education piece for.
Yeah, it is something that I'm, I guess living in Vancouver, I was watching all these pipeline conversations, and they weren't really conversations. It were yelling matches, right? And it was just like, if we could sit at a round table and actually explain some of these points, and if you'd be open-minded to listen, like, yes, we all want to get more efficient, but we got a timeline here. Like, we can't do it like this, right? And just like, let's draw up something, right? Or let's just have something that people can go and get educated instead of just yelling at each other and, nothing is getting accomplished.
It's just a waste of energy, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like with the pipeline, it was kind of like when Rachel Notley was like, "Fine, we're just buying rail cars," and it's like, really, like that's where we want to go with our solution is.
Yeah.
They just sent a tanker full of crude oil off the west coast of Canada, down the Pacific Coastway, through the Panama Canal, and back up the eastern seaboard. It's on its way right now to go to the plant in New Brunswick.
Well, and look at what they were talking about in Quebec with shortage of propane and they're like, we don't have a solution. It's like, we've had a solution
Yeah,
forever.
exactly.
So it is something that, maybe we should revisit this at another time, but I think
Another show.
It really it could be, but it would actually like if Mayor Nenchi's listening, I want you on here because we want to start doing this for everybody in Alberta, and if we started in one spot and made a foundation, then we can maybe grow that exponentially throughout Canada.
I mean, I think that's a big reason as to why we're doing even this show is if we talk about something that annoys us, and I'm sure it annoys other people. Like we're doing a new segment on the show that we've just started releasing, is where we just rant about stuff that makes us upset, right? And we call it ranting. It's like it's talking apes, ranting apes, right? And it's like we talk about and it's mostly Jeff that just talks, and I sit there, and then sometimes if I get
he gives me a pat on the shoulder, like
right? and that's really one of the reasons we started this, is that we want people to know what at least the two of us are thinking, because I'm sure we have conversations like this off mic with people where they're like, I can't understand why this is happening, and why don't people talk more about it, and that's what we're trying to do.
And what it's trying to do is stop pointing the finger of we can't do that because of these guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So let's fix the problem.
Playing the blame game.
Yeah.
And
okay, so
I did want to, as we close today, I wanted to maybe put this last question to you. If you could, with your voice now, talk to somebody as academic chairs of a reputed technical school, if you could talk to somebody that's thinking about what they want to do after high school, what would you tell them, and how would you sell the trades?
For me, because we do go out to high schools and stuff, Dylan and myself, and then some of the faculty members, they go out to high schools and talk to students and that. And it's just, it's the old thing. You like working with your hands kind of thing. You can make a good living. Like, do I look like a plumber or do I look like a banker? Kind of thing. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with working with your hands or being a tradesman at all. You can tell your kids that you did that building and that building and that building kind of thing. Take some pride in your work and that, like you can see what you built.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's something. Do you think that we should start putting grades towards their workmanship, the quality of workmanship,
craftsmanship, and like the art of their trade? Because there's guys that plumb, but then you walk into a mechanical.
They get their ticket, and then it's like
Picasso
everything.
Exactly, the Picasso plumber. Exactly. Oh, I got to make that trending on the internet. Picasso plumbing.
Yeah, we'll leave that one alone for now.
Well, I think that exists actually, and unofficially in a lot of different workplaces. Like, I don't know. I used to set people's rates and hire people, and if I knew a guy was gonna, it's not just about his workmanship, but it's also his attitude. Attitude precedes everything, right?
Yep.
Like you're there early, you're the last guy there, you're asking questions, and you built that magnificent piece of whatever mechanical
art,
right?
Yeah.
So those guys get more.
Yeah.
So they might not get an A+, but they're going to get an extra $10 an hour.
Yeah.
If I've got that latitude as their manager, they're going to get more.
Yeah.
Or they get the overtime, or they get the option for it if they want it, right?
Yes.
And I mean, Derrick, we asked you to sell the trades. Now, if somebody's thinking about, let's say someone's thinking about getting into the trades, how would you get them to come into the pipe trades?
I've actually, I've been doing this to my neighbor's kids. So one of them signed up for the construction project management degree program. He's 19, and he comes from a long line of plumbers. They actually helped build, like his grandfather was the superintendent for the prime mechanical outfit that built the Aldred Center, actually.
Oh, yeah.
So he's grown up around plumbing. He's been plumbing for 3 or 4 years, right? So he wants to get out of it, right? So he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. And my thing is like, just get your ticket. It sets a foundation for you to basically build upon. It's a great way to get some money in your jeans, right? Build some skills, build relationships, and it's a springboard, right? You don't have to spring off of the board. You can be a plumber forever and be proud of it. It's a noble trade. Or you can use it as a stepping stone to get into project management, estimating. You can start your own company, right? It's the
It certainly
foundation.
lends more credibility when you have a ticket going into project management.
Absolutely.
Any
Engineering.
anything like that.
Like, who here hasn't worked for a project manager who doesn't have a trade? And he's like, well, yeah, here's the drawings. Be like, well, what about this? Be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? That they get no credit, right? Those guys are gone.
Yeah. No, I remember that, and just walking out of the project meetings going, okay,
This is gonna be a good one.
Yeah, I'll decide.
yeah, we're gonna have to extend this schedule just a little bit.
Change order special.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, you get the trade, and then it depends where you go in life, kind of thing. You can go anywhere, kind of thing. Like lots of guys that I've worked with over the years, like become an inspector, engineer reps and stuff like that.
Work in sales.
Technical sales.
Technical sales and stuff.
I mean, there's so much opportunity in understanding what goes into building something. And for me, it was a really eye-opening thing. For me, I grew up in Dubai. It's, silver spoon in my mouth, and it's just like, turn the tap on, water, and you just flip the switch, lights turn on. It's adjust the thermostat when my dad's not looking. So, right, and it's all of a sudden cooler in the house, right? So, and it's just like you take a lot of these things for granted, and it's like understanding that and being able to be on the other side. Like, I know not only understand it, but I can build it and I can make it. And I think that, trades. I sometimes think that I would have definitely, as a person with severe attention deficiency and hyperactivity, would have definitely done exceptionally well in something that was with my hands. Either
past the safety meeting. Come on,
probably I would have showed up in flip flops and a tank top. But I mean, I really really appreciate you guys taking the time to come in and talk to us today.
And
I know.
The last and final thing is mentor. Who was your mentor?
You can name drop.
To do with trades?
It's just your mentor,
just
your life.
anything.
Career-wise?
Yeah, like how do you ended up where you are today? Who was your mentor that got you here? For your neighbor's kid, it could be you one day.
That's a tough call. There was one project manager that I worked for when the turnaround came to the plant. I was a superintendent for a lot of years up north at one plant in particular. And his name's Fred Veenbass, actually. And
Veenbass.
Yeah, I really looked up to him. Called him Beanbag. He was he's
To
genius.
his face or behind him?
Oh yeah, he's a genius, right? And unassuming, knew everything, like a human encyclopedia, right? And everyone respected him. Short dude, walked around, and people just cleared a path. And he just boom, 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 boom on the radio, like 3 radios going at a time. Just the man,
Killing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've always
Fred
kind of
Beanbags.
aspired to be like Fred for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
How about for yourself?
There's a couple superintendents that I had that kind of, took me under their wing kind of thing and showed me how to do things the right way and stuff. And then one of my hockey coaches too was like personally growing up and stuff. Yeah, he taught me a lot of life lessons and stuff.
Absolutely.
You're lazy.
It's a good life
Never
lesson.
work for me.
It's a good life lesson.
You want a name drop?
No.
Okay.
No, well, I wanted to thank you guys again so much for taking the time. Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. I really believe that you guys are, the SAIT campus is one of probably the, nicest, best, technical colleges I've ever seen. Kind of been to a few across Western Canada at the very least. And if anyone out there is considering a career in the trades and lives in the Calgary area, Southern Alberta Institute of Technology is a phenomenal place to be. And Dylan,
And I'm
Derrick.
sure we're going to ask you guys back on the show.
Oh,
here.
absolutely. Right. And
That'd be great.
yeah,
Yep.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much,
having
gentlemen.
us. This is fun.
Yeah, it was. Thank you very much.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Cheers.